Hey, so today I wanted to share why it's really important not to give your attention to all the negativity in the world. I mean, it's useful to be aware of what's going on. It's useful to keep up to date to some degree, but it's becoming really important not to feed it. And we feed it by giving it our attention. We feed the negativity, we feed the injustices, we feed the elites, we feed the politicians with our attention, with our anger, with our disgust, with our shock and surprise and horror. And we need to make it a spiritual practice to withdraw our attention from the stupid shit, withdraw our consent, because for as long as we're giving it our attention, we're consenting to it. On some level, we're consenting to it. And it's becoming really important that we put our attention to what we're bringing in, to what we're creating, to the new earth, to the new world, to the new way of being. So today I want to share with you the reason why I feel so at peace and fearless and not in any way bothered anymore about the old story, the old paradigm, and about this kind of like dualistic battle that's been taking place between the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the elites and the poverty-stricken. I want to share why I'm not giving it any attention anymore and why it doesn't bother me anymore. And I'm not saying, in one of my last videos, I said about Great Spirit has said we've got one more chance. But this does not mean it's going to be easy. Because it also said, but we've got to let go of the stupid shit. We've got to let go of the negativity and the consenting to and enabling all the crap. But this is a process that's going to take place regardless of whether we consent to it or not. It's going to take place anyway, and this is why. So most of you have probably heard of the Kali Yugas. And there's, in the Vedic literature, the descriptions of the Kali Yuga are on huge, huge spaces of time. They're like hundreds of thousands of years. And, according to the Vedic literature, we've still got another 400,000 years in the Kali Yuga, which, in all honesty, it doesn't really make sense. If we continue to live like this, if we continue even for another 20 years, we're pretty extinct. So it's a good job that it's shifting and changing, regardless of what we do. And this is also, I think, what the great plan is. We often hear about the great plan, God's plan. And I used to be quite cynical, like, yeah, right, there's a plan. Okay, but I do feel that this is actually the pattern of the plan. The plan is a pattern. The plan is a program that cycles. It cycles, and it's ingrained in existence. And so the Kali Yuga cycle isn't as vast as it was said to be. Sri Yukteswar, who was the guru of Yogananda, the one that wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, Sri Yukteswar was a student of Babaji. Now, Babaji was an avatar. He was from hundreds of years before, but people believe him to have incarnated up in the Himalayas recently, or 100 years ago or so. So Sri Yukteswar, whether it was on a higher plane or in actuality, he said Babaji told him that the timing had been misunderstood, and it wasn't hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years for this cycle of, precession of the equinox. So I have to write it all down. So the precession of the equinox is the time that he was talking about, somewhere between 24 to 26,000 years. And it's never going to be precise. I know we like things to be precise in the West. We like our clocks to tick on the time. We like the Gregorian well, maybe we don't all like the Gregorian calendar, but the Gregorian calendar, it actually doesn't really fit. And we can tell this that it's been messed around with. Why is December, 12th month, should be 10, October 8, it's the 10th. Sept, 7 is the 9th month. So we know that it doesn't fit, but this is because nature doesn't work in perfect segments. She's organic. She has a rhythm. Like the heartbeat isn't precise. The heart rate variability is the gap between each heart. And the more healthy you are, the more varied that gap is between each heartbeat. So the patterns, they happen in a spiral, not in a precise circle. They spiral. So I say that this Kali Yuga cycle is between 24 and 26,000 years, and it possibly shifts and changes in between its ages. So the last golden age would have been about 12,000, 13,000 years ago. And the way Sri Yuga describes it is we have back to back a golden age that's one of the longer cycles, meeting the top, then another golden age, and then it descends down through the other two ages, which I can't remember the name. One's really quite cosmic and one's more about energy. Begins with Dra. Anyway, and then the energetic age, and then it enters the Kali Yuga. Now, the Kali Yuga is the shortest. It's about 1,200 years. Going in, that's one, and then coming out, another 1,200 years. So about 2,400, and there's a 200-year, 300-year transition phase in and out. Now, Sri Yuga says we began to leave the Kali Yuga in the 1800s because our knowledge of energy started to come back to us. And this is a remembering. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because the reason I know two things, or I don't know for sure. I feel quite certain. And if I am wrong, it doesn't really matter, actually, because it's important how we live our lives, full stop. It doesn't matter about the outcome. But on a level of the mundane and the reality, this is why I am not worried there's going to be an absolute cataclysmic event, which many people feel there might be. And I've spent a lot of my time feeling that there was going to be quite a cataclysmic event. But two, I don't feel that we are going to go through an extraordinarily awful, it will be quite challenging, but it's not a complete and utter destruction. So this Kali Yuga cycle, my feeling is, and I'm not claiming this to be a download, I'm not saying this isn't a download, this is just my contemplations, that at the top of the cycle, at the top of the golden age, at the peak of the golden age, that is when the cycle of humanity that's gone from all the way down, descent through the Kali Yuga and back up and ascended back to the golden age. It's at the peak of the golden age that a massive cataclysm comes and destroys everything, and humanity leaves to the next dimension, to the next level, as a whole, as a collective consciousness. And then a few beings remain just to help tie it over. And then the next load of humanity begin to get born in and incarnate in. And we slowly descend, which is unfortunate. We descend, we forget, we lose touch with. This is why Göbekli Tepe was buried. This is why the Easter Island heads were buried, because they knew. Because we were at the peak of our evolutionary. It was almost like a whole planet full of Christs. Well, it would have been like a whole planet full of Christs. We probably didn't eat hardly anything. We might have eaten a bit of fruit just for pleasure. And eating would have been for pleasure rather than necessity. We probably would have lived for 700 years or something like this, 800 years. Life is exquisite in the Golden Age. It truly is the Garden of Eden. And then we all leave onto a more energetic. We leave the physical plane and we enter a more energetic plane as the evolution goes on. If you're curious for my idea of evolution, watch my Taurus video. Taurus toroidal nature of reality thing that I did some time ago. And then the next load come in. And so what we've just gone through. So history's been pretty horrible for 6,000 years. It's been extraordinarily horrible for most people in the European countries, and then as we took that horror out around the world for the last 400-500 years, it's been pretty awful for 1,000. And even once a friend said to me, yes, but the indigenous cultures, they don't seem to have suffered the Kali Yuga, which is true, because they're smaller groups of people that were able to keep community. And yet still there's been a lot of blood sacrifice within cultures all over the world, which is fine. I'm not making any judgment on that, but I don't feel, as consciousness raises itself back up out of this dark time of low virtue and separation, I don't feel the blood sacrifices are needed anymore because something shifts and changes. So during the Kali Yuga, 2,500 years pretty much, so Jesus Christ came in as we were forgetting everything. Christ came in as we were just descending, and that was what his gift was. He was like the last seed thrower and seed scatterer, or one of them. Muhammad, Christ, Buddha, Guru Rinpoche, many beings have still come and tried to keep a thread for us to hold, to keep us through, as we literally pass through the cesspit of physical existence. As we descend into the lowest state of virtue, the crown closes off, the root closes off, we become separated beings from God and from earth, and we think we're separate beings, and we fully believe this, and we spend this period of time basically surviving, and in many ways pretty horribly. But this is why I'm not giving my attention to the empire, to the old way of things, to the elites that think they're going to continue their control and their power and all of this stuff. To start with, nature doesn't allow it. Civilizations rise and fall, rise and fall. And if we haven't made a mess of things more than any culture so far, I don't know. I don't know who has. We absolutely have made quite a mess of it. But this doesn't make me feel that that's it. It's a death and a rebirth. What's been taking place for these last few years has been the transition, the pupa phase, where we've literally, I remember the first 6 months of COVID, there was no longer a consensus reality. There used to be a kind of consensus reality that everyone was like, yeah, that's the way it is, that's how things are. That all went. During COVID, that went. There was no consensus reality. There was all kinds of crazy shit on the internet. There was everything you could possibly imagine, and people were just free-falling. And this was the pupa phase. And now you notice for the last 2-3 years, people have been in breakdown. We've been breaking, myself, I've been in breakdown. I've had 2 winters of being utterly stripped apart, my toolbox emptied, nothing. And this is still taking place because we're being purged. We are being purged. Our ancestral karma is being cleaned out. And if you want a metaphor, an image, it's like if the Kali Yuga is like a elliptical sort of circle, this bottom bit that we've just passed through is like we've just been dragged through mud and horrible shit. And now as we're being lifted up out of it, so we've just come out of the mud in the last 100 years or so, and we're rising up, and the mud's falling away. It's just falling off us. Now some of us have no real memory of anything other than being coated in mud and separation, in survival and in me and you, and we're totally separate, and materialism. Others are comfortable. Others have recognized their spirit. Others have had awakening experiences. They've recognized the nature of what they truly are. So as this muck falls away from them, it's not as distressing. It's not as worrying. But for some people, they've never known anything other than that way of being. And they're holding on to it for dear life. They can't let go of it. They're ingrained. Their nervous system's ingrained in it. And so this is what's taking place now, is a huge purge. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying it's going to be nice, and I'm not saying it's going to be comfortable, because we've kind of exhausted a lot of those things in a way, in our ignorance. But the power of it and the fruit of what's coming is just phenomenal. And so my message today is, don't freak out. Stop feeding all the negative stuff. Stop giving your attention to worrying. I've been very conspiratorial in my life, but I was kind of tracking it all during COVID. And I was tracking it almost obsessively. And there were times when I did momentarily fall into a deep state of fear. And I was kind of worried that if things went the way they might go, I would end up in an internment camp with the way I was feeling about it all. And now, but then something would come, somebody would get in touch, I would find a video would come up on my algorithms that would just bring me back into center, bring me back into fearlessness, and I would drop it and I would carry on in joy and happiness. as much as possible. And so this is my message. If you're going through a breakdown, which many of us have been and are, try and surrender. Try and allow the breakdown to break you down, because it's actually like, it's like you're an old motor that's just been dragged through a load of gunk, and now we need to be taken apart. We need to be taken apart and cleaned and have all that stuff removed and gotten rid of, because now we're going into a new phase. Our consciousnesses are being uplifted. Our physical bodies are being upgraded. So we need to be taken apart and emptied and put back together. And that's what's going on for a lot of us in these breakdowns. So if you're in a space of breakdown, try and surrender. Try and allow it to happen. Try and invite it in, because once the breakdown has happened, it's like ground zero. Once all the old crap's been moved and there's nothing left, it's like ground zero. You've just got a clear ground for the next version of you to regrow, and it will grow back stronger and better and more resilient and more prepared for what's coming, because there is stuff coming. There is stuff coming, and I encourage you to hold ground in your heart, ground in your heart. So a little bit more, just going back to 2018 and to what I've perceived. So this was more of a download. The summer of 2019, I saw how, as this time of the Kali Yuga started to come about, and especially in the last couple of thousand years, basically, it's like these golden filaments of life and information and light that exist within the realm had to literally go underground. And they burrowed underground to hide and to be safe, because everything above ground was being trashed. And the indigenous peoples managed to keep connection with this and keep the information alive through their oral traditions, through their knowing. But for a lot of us, we were completely cut off and separated from it. Those in the apparently civilized world and the developing world, utterly disconnected from it. Mostly, not everyone and not always. And those that did reach for connection and make connection, like the yogis of India, Tibet, the shamanic practitioners of the indigenous cultures, one or two steps towards it and it would connect with them very easily, because it needed that anchoring and connection, and it needed that remembering throughout this period of time. But now, when in 2008, what I saw was these golden filaments just erupting from the ground and erupting up through us as people as well, and us becoming the threads of this new tapestry that's weaving its way. And it's weaving us. We don't have to weave it. It's weaving us. And it's the new story, and it's the old story from before. And it's the story of ascent, and of consciousness rising, and of remembering, and of coming back to our Christic selves and our awakened natures of loving, compassionate, interconnected beings. And whenever I hear people of the materialistic modern world saying that we're at the peak of civilization, it just makes me, I'm in disbelief. I'm in utter disbelief, because we are like children. We are still like children. We're bickering, we're fighting, we're squabbling over our toys, over our things. We haven't even learnt how to share properly yet. But we're getting there, and it's not far away. And this is our job. This is our mission, is to grow up, which we are being grown up. You can't stop a child from growing up. And in the same way, you can't stop the ascent of consciousness. Your divine inheritance is unavoidable. So relax. Surrender. Open your heart fearlessly. Be fearless love in the face of fear, in the face of anger, in the face of challenge. Surrender and trust. It's a time for radical trust. Radical trust. And in my heart, I look to the world and it's bonkers. And I do get a sense that this autumn, things are going to get really bonkers. And I beg you, please don't fall into fear. Stay rooted in your heart. Stay rooted in consciousness and what you can feel taking place. Because in my body, in my heart, I am excited. I am feeling so, so excited about what's taking place. But if I fall into my rational mind and I look at what's taking place in the world, it's heartbreaking. It's insanity to the max. But this is what happens. It's almost like the empiric consciousness, the empire of old that this modern world has been built upon. Is almost like the dinosaurs watching the meteorite coming. And this is why we don't need to worry, we don't need to fight, we don't need to aggressively oppose, because it's dying, it's done, it's finished. There's no place for that mentality, for that greed and selfishness. It simply will be an irrational way of being in the future, because as consciousness ascends, as we wake up back to our interconnected nature, as our Christic hearts open again once they realise it's safe to, and as the muck falls away and the jewel becomes revealed in the heart of our lotuses, there is no stopping the ascent of consciousness. So relax and enjoy the ride and be in love, because a lot of people won't be enjoying the ride and a lot of people will be freaked out. And if it gets really crazy and things go completely tits up, if massive solar flare happens, if a star Betelgeuse explodes in the sky, if some great galactic superwave comes and knocks out all the electricity, don't panic. Be collective. Forge community. We've been kind of planning this for a while. We know we need to be doing this. So keep your heads, keep your hearts. And if people are freaking out, stay away. Stay away from them. Keep to what you know you can manage. And stay in radical trust. Stay in radical trust. It is a time of purge. A lot of people are leaving the planet because there's too much. It's like the mud falling off. Some people just can't cope with it. And that's okay, because they'll leave and they'll release that body and that nervous system that's been too impacted by the challenges of the past, of the history, and then they can come back in again in a new body that's new and ready and able to deal with what's coming. So, yeah, that's my message today. Just please try not to feed the nonsense. Root and ground yourself in radical trust, in your heart space, in the golden threads of the earth, like a golden anchor into the earth and sky, and stay steady. And if you're breaking down, bless you on your breakdown. May you break through soon. Okay, thank you.